Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. Thank you as always for joining us. A lot going on these past few weeks. I've been taking a little time off, but the wheels of justice keep moving forward, and Judicial Watch's Supreme Court case is accelerating. We filed a key brief the last few weeks, the opening brief in Judicial Watch's lawsuit that's before the Supreme Court, where we're representing a member of Congress, Congressman Walz, and two presidential electors, and trying to vindicate their right to challenge a dubious, or that's a charitable way of putting it, unlawful election rule that allows the counting of ballots that arrive for up to 14 days after election. And we did a quick video explaining the issue here. We will go to clip 15 to help you understand it.
Judicial Watch is taking its election integrity fight to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just agreed to hear Judicial Watch's appeal for a case filed on behalf of Congressman Mike Bost and two presidential electors, challenging an Illinois law extending Election Day for 14 days beyond the date established by federal law. The lower courts had previously denied that Congressman Bost and the electors had standing to challenge Illinois' practice of counting ballots received for up to 2 weeks after Election Day. In the lawsuit, Judicial Watch argues, despite Congress's clear statement regarding a single national election day, Illinois has expanded Election Day by extending by 14 days the date for receipt and counting of vote-by-mail ballots. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton had this to say about the upcoming Supreme Court action. The Supreme Court's decision to hear this case is a critical opportunity to uphold federal law, protect voter rights, and ensure election integrity. Illinois' 14-day extension of Election Day thwarts federal law, violates the civil rights of voters, and invites fraud. Last year, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with Judicial Watch that it was unlawful for Mississippi to count ballots that arrived after Election Day. Visit judicialwatch.org to learn more.
So this is the brief. This is what it looks like. What is it about? Oh, it's longer than I thought. It is how many pages long? Looks like it's almost 50 pages or 45 pages long. Yeah, 48 pages long, explaining why the Supreme Court should rule in our client's favor that federal law gives candidates or candidates have standing under the Constitution to challenge the lawlessness that's going on in Illinois. And as we highlight in the brief, it's really a straightforward issue. And, you know, I'm sure we can always lose, right? But I'd be hard-pressed to figure out how that would happen. And this is why it's such a strong case. Federal law sets the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November as federal election day. Candidates have an obvious interest in the lawfulness and fairness of the rules that govern the elections into which they pour their time and resources. They also have an obvious interest in ensuring that the final vote tally accurately reflects the legal valid votes cast. Does it get any more straightforward than that? Candidates pour enormous resources into running for election and have an obvious interest in the rules that dictate how long their races will last and how the ballots will be counted. So obviously, if a campaign is going to last until Election Day plus 2 more weeks, I thought I put up 3. 2 more weeks, of course candidates need to know what's going on. And if those 2 weeks are unlawfully imposed on him, he has a right to object through a federal court action like we're providing for him here. So they have an obvious interest in the rules that dictate how long their races will last and how the ballots will be counted. They also have a distinct interest in, quote, ensuring that the final vote tally accurately reflects the legally valid votes cast. Now, Judicial Watch's legal team makes a simple and powerful argument to the Supreme Court. It's obvious that candidates have standing to challenge unlawful rules governing the elections into which they are pouring untold resources. It's straightforward. And the government's response, or Illinois' response, is due, I think, relatively soon. And it has to be all done, I think, by September, because we also received news that October 8th is the date of the oral argument before the Supreme Court. That's when the court actually comes back into session for its new term that week, the first Monday of October. So our argument is going to be that Wednesday, October 8th. Judicial Watch's legal team is second to none. I may have talked to you about it already, but we've brought in Paul Clement to argue the case for us. Paul has had 100 arguments before the Supreme Court, one of the country's leading practitioners before the Supreme Court bar. It shows you that we're playing to win here. We're not coming into this case lightly. And on top of that, we've got a great election law team. Bob Popper, former senior official in the Justice Department, is running our election law operation here in Washington, D.C. We have Russ Nobile, who's been shepherding this case as well. Russ is a former attorney with the Justice Department, one of the nation's preeminent experts on election law. And also my colleague Eric Lee, who's been with us. Of course, I should know how long Eric's been with us. But he's been doing so much work on election law. I tell you, I wouldn't want to go up against Eric when it came to the facts in any matter of election law. So a tremendous team pushing this case forward. And we're ready to go on October 8th, right? And as I said in our release announcing the October 8th date, which was just set this week, what did I say? Simply put, this is an historic election law challenge. Too many courts have denied candidates their right to challenge unlawful election rules, such as the outrageous act of counting ballots that arrive after Election Day. American citizens concerned about election integrity will tune in closely to Judicial Watch's October 8th Supreme Court oral argument. And I think it's going to be available online. Typically, these arguments are now available via audio, if not as the arguments are happening shortly thereafter. But secondly, this isn't the only case related to post-election day counting of ballots that arrive after Election Day. We had a major victory in Mississippi where they count ballots for up to 5 days after Election Day. And that case, we were representing the Libertarian Party in Mississippi down there. And it was our case. The Republicans came in as well. But we've been pushing this issue, and none of this would be where it is today but for Judicial Watch's heavy lifting. And the case was I think we lost at the lower court, and we appealed it to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which upheld our theory of the case and found the counting of ballots received after Election Day to be unlawful. Well, Mississippi, a big victory, because that's the only appellate court to, I think, have not only considered the issue, but then found in our favor. There are 19 states that do it. Now in the Fifth Circuit, you're not supposed to do it, counting ballots that arrive after Election Day. So they've appealed it up to the Supreme Court. So not only are we fighting in this current case we have, but Mississippi is trying to get the Supreme Court to take another case which goes to the merits of the argument. So just to remember, the case that we have now before the court is about standing, meaning whether someone has the right to challenge the law at issue in court, and should they get their day in court. The underlying merits of the case as to whether it's lawful or not to extend Election Day by counting ballots that arrive after Election Day for, 5 days, 2 weeks? Who knows, right? That is being asked to go up to the court by Mississippi. Mississippi is seeking cert. And so we urge the Supreme Court in response on behalf of our clients, I think it was just this week or last, to say Mississippi's law is unlawful. There's no reason to even take up this case, and so the law stands. Congress statutorily, this is the case we make. This is the case this is what the Fifth Circuit opinion upholding our theory of the law stated. Congress statutorily designated a singular day for the election of members of Congress. and the appointment of presidential electors. Text, precedent, and historical practice confirm this day for the election, quote unquote, is the day by which ballots must be both cast by voters and received by state officials. Because Mississippi statute allows ballot receipt up to 5 days after the federal election day, it is preempted by federal law. And then they reverse the court's contrary judgment and remand for further proceedings. So Mississippi has challenged this this decision, and so it could be that Judicial Watch has 2 Supreme Court cases this year, if they take it up, on election integrity. I mean, we've got this core issue about the rights of candidates to challenge illegal election procedures, and then we have this other case about the underlying principle involved, which is whether it's lawful to basically take ballots for who knows how long after Election Day and keep on counting them. I mean, under the logic of the supporters of this ability of states to count ballots that arrive after Election Day, what's the limiting factor? Maybe you just keep the elections open until the next election, right? There's got to be an endpoint, and the endpoint is set in federal law. And I think it's interesting because we're having this fight about rigging elections, right? And this issue in Texas related to redistricting and all of that. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. But I find it more than a little bit interesting because we've litigated this in California, because we have a third case over California's counting of ballots that arrive after Election Day. 7 days after Election Day, they take ballots in and count them. And we were representing Congressman Darrell Issa to try to stop that. And that case is on hold while our Supreme Court litigation proceeds. But we found in the course of investigating and setting up that lawsuit that 2 Democrats won seats in the House of Representatives only as a result of the counting of ballots that arrived after Election Day. So there are 2 seats, I would argue, that should be flipped back to the Republican incumbents by the House, enforce the rule of law on elections. And it's disappointing they haven't even raised that issue or looked into it. You could be sure Democrats would have if the shoe were on the other foot. So, you know, for all the redistricting battles, there are 2 Democrat seats that arguably should be Republican seats, could be switched at any minute. Or, you know, there's no time limit to dealing with this. So these are sensitive issues. They go to how votes are counted, what counts as a lawful ballot, whether the rules matter, whether voter confidence matters, because you know, if they don't know who won on Election Day, most people presume something's up. They're just waiting for the number of votes to come in to ensure the candidate of their choice, the election officials, candidate that they are interested in winning, actually wins. I would go a step further. I would suggest that the law requires the certification of the winner on Election Day, that they have to know who won on Election Day. In 2020, President Trump had the votes to win the presidency on Election Day. That result changed as a result of post-Election Day counting that is unprecedented in various swing states. And I tell you, if they had stuck to just counting the ballots that had gotten there on time and counting them in a timely way, he would have already been through his second term. But in the least, ballots that arrive after Election Day, they can't be counted. I mean, there could be some exceptions to that, but the exceptions prove the rule. Election Day means Election Day, and to count ballots that arrive after Election Day invites voter fraud, is contrary to federal law, and undermines voter confidence. So we got 2 major cases, one that's hot, meaning the court is already taking it up before the Supreme Court. We're going to argue on October 8th. And then there's another case that the court may take up, deciding whether or not Judicial Watch's victory will stand on behalf of the rule of law in terms of outlawing or finding unlawful the counting of ballots that arrive after Election Day. And I tell you, if there's anyone else doing more for this, tell me about them, because I want to work with them through Judicial Watch. But no one is doing as much work as we are on these election integrity issues. I mean, I'll tell you more about it later in the program, but this is historic work. You know, a lot of this was one of the reasons 2020 turned out the way it did in terms of it being compromised and disputed, because the courts didn't want to provide standing to people challenging these rule changes as unlawful. And I'm hoping the Supreme Court clarifies it and allows this to go forward. You know, there's been a lot of news the last few weeks because a lot of it's happened since I've been here. I'm not going to go back and go over the details with some of it right now. But I would submit one of the most important revelations in the last 2 weeks you didn't know about. Because the media is what the media is. Judicial Watch uncovered that the Biden administration was concerned about Chinese influence being expanded and vindicated by Tim Walz's being selected as vice president in the nomination during the 2024 election. The Biden Homeland Security Department, the Biden FBI was investigating Walz's connections to China, seemingly knew about them, and that material was released to us by Secretary Noem's Department of Homeland Security. That was as important a revelation, an astonishing revelation, as anything else you've heard about recently. And it wasn't from several years ago, it was just last year. Now, we had sued for these records back in, let me go to the press release and I'll tell you when we sued for them. Oh, back in March. We asked for all documents and communications in the DHS Microsoft Teams group chat referring or relating to Minnesota Governor Timothy Walz, all intelligence information reports and regional intelligence notes referring to Walz, and other documents about him. It's because we knew that Walz was likely the subject of China investigations. I think we knew. Let me go back to the lawsuit, because I'm sure we had reason to ask for the records. Let's see, what was the basis? Oh, yeah. On October 29th, 2024, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer said a Homeland Security whistleblower told the committee that Walz was a target of the Chinese Communist Party as someone they can get to D.C. The whistleblower also disclosed that officials from the Department of Homeland Security Office Intelligence and Analysis and Homeland Security Investigations have been involved in the department's investigative or intelligence work connected with the CCP, the state of Minnesota, and Governor Walz. Now, Walz has been to China multiple times. He's a big fan of the Chinese people personally, which is fine. But obviously his connections to the Chinese government and his going back and forth certainly would raise on its face national security issues, given the fact he's a high-ranking government official and almost became, well, maybe not almost, given how big a loss they had, certainly was about to be a heartbeat away from the presidency if Kamala Harris had managed to win. So quite simply, there was a cover-up about that during the Biden campaign, during the Biden administration. And the Trump administration, through Kristi Noem, released the information. And it's astonishing. Look at the headline from our release here. Let's go bring that up here. Can you see it? Judicial Watch. China is happy. Emails reveal Biden, DHS, and FBI investigations of Tim Walz in Communist China. Pretty incredible stuff. So let's go do a little deep dive into this, shall we? Because you're not going to find it anywhere else. An email dated August 6, 2024, the day Walz was officially named the Democrat vice presidential nominee, shows Homeland Security personnel discussing how they were aware Communist China had a plan to target the politicians likely to end up in D.C., specifically Walz and Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo. A Homeland Security official states, Walz got the VP. You have no idea how this feeds into what the PRC, the People's Republic of China, has been doing here with him and local gov. It is seriously a line of the intel. Target someone who is perceived they can get to D.C. China is happy. Another official responds, this speaks too long to the raw, this speaks to the RIN, the raw intelligence you reviewed for us. So they had raw intelligence tying Walz to the Chinese, or certainly Chinese interests to Walz's success. Now compare and contrast with the histrionics, that we've learned further about in the last few weeks, where they made up information about Russia being supportive of President Trump winning. On the contrary, they had literally raw intelligence and significant intelligence within the Biden administration that the Chinese were ecstatic about Walz's elevation to the vice presidential nomination. A participant added in the documents, because this is a back and forth, the perception narrative that has been pushed with one of the local NGOs had direct ties to the former government here in Nevada. FBI is lead on a couple of things. The only issue is being in the Ninth Circuit. So it's a little unclear there, but it shows that the FBI was investigating related issues in Nevada. Good to know, and yes, there is involvement with Homeland Security investigations and FBI on things here. If anyone has any interest, I can provide you context in a classified setting. But this has more, someone else says, but this has more of a strategic impact than obviously the general public knows. A participant in the August 2024 group chat with a redacted name states, China is happy. China is happy, referencing Walz's nomination. Pretty incredible. Did you read about it in the New York Times, the Washington Post, on CNN, anywhere? I think our friends at Just the News covered it. I think that's about it. Maybe some other places covered it. But you had intelligence investigations confirming Chinese interest in seeing Walz win, happiness that he was even nominated to be vice president. And it's been crickets here in Washington, D.C. And there was evidence that it had been disclosed. There had been evidence that it had happened, right, that there was these investigations and concerns. And it took Judicial Watch to come in and uncover the material. Let's see what else is here. These documents uncovered by Judicial Watch show that the Biden administration covered up intelligence concerns about Tim Walz's connections to China. This is a major scandal. Don't you agree? I mean, Walz is still a major political figure. He's out there promoting himself, which is what politicians do. I don't blame him for doing that. He probably wants to run for president. But he's in China's back pocket, it looks like. This is what or China thinks he's in their back pocket. I don't know. To be fair to him, he may not understand how much he's been compromised. But the Chinese consider him to be an asset, it looks like, based on these documents. And per usual, they're all on the internet. And I'll show you what they look like. I kind of read through them. I guess I should have called them up. 47 pages, so they're pretty accessible to you. Let me bring it up. Hit download, open up the PDF. Yeah, so these text messages, look at this. Can you bring it up? See that? Walt's got the VP. Read that first text message. You have no idea how this feeds into what PRC has been doing here with him and local gov. It's seriously a line of the intel. Target someone who's perceived they can get to D.C. This speaks, too, to the raw intelligence he reviewed for us. Now look at this bottom one. But this has more of a strategic impact than obviously the general public knows. There's a story they were tracking about Chinese reaction to him being elected or selected. Right? So our government was tracking, this is a government document, they were tracking Chinese reactions to Walz being offered the nomination for vice president. Here, look. BBC, this is a government file. So they thought it was interesting. Some more text messages. Oh, this is the kicker. China is happy with a link to that BBC story. That was the conclusion they drew. Look at this. With FBI mission in the counterintelligence field, I believe they need to get included too. And then look at this down here. China's happy, right? I think this conversation is foilable. Bring it back to me. There we go. It is foilable. And credit to NOMS, Department of Homeland Security, for releasing this. This is pretty extraordinary material to get out of the agency. So this was a specific decision to put this material out. Typically, we would never have seen it. I mean, based on my nearly 30 years experience at Judicial Watch, we would never have seen these records. Even if they had been disclosed in redacted form to us, we would never have been able to get behind them. And this shows you why it's important to have a commitment to transparency by the president and his appointees. It's the only way to cut through the bureaucratic and self-interested protection rackets in the deep state that keep material like this out of the public domain in order to protect leftists and Democrats. So I'm hoping Comer does a follow-up on this. Maybe I should send this material over to him. I don't know if he knows we have it. Note to self, follow up with Congress, right? That's kind of what we do here at Judicial Watch. We get material and then we think, what else can we do to kind of get the public educated about this? Sometimes we share it with Congress, sometimes we share it with the media, and of course, always we share it with you. That's never really the question. This question is what else we can do to get it out. And I encourage you, if you're watching, you're all on the internet, right? You have social media accounts. Share this material. Go to the link below and share it. This is a big story. Kamala Harris's number 2 was compromised by China. Not according to Judicial Watch, not according to Donald Trump, but according to the Department of Homeland Security under Joe Biden. What's his name? Alejandro Mayorkas is Homeland Security. The same group that let in the millions of illegal alien invaders. Well, they were tracking Chinese interest in Mr. Walz, Governor Walz, being elevated to vice presidential candidate by Kamala Harris. So just tremendous work, again, by Judicial Watch. Kudos to the Trump administration for releasing this information. This is about as important material as you'll ever see out of Judicial Watch. Now, we have comparable material that comes out more often than quite unbelievably, but this is pretty serious stuff. And so I encourage you to pay more attention to it and follow up. and demand more accountability, because if he continues to be a threat, that's something the public needs to know about. A national security threat. Boy, oh boy. So the big news here in Washington, D.C. is the great move by President Trump to federalize the police in Washington, D.C. and deploy the National Guard to deal with the out-of-control crime problem. Under the Home Rule law that governs Washington, D.C., the president can take over the police department more or less for 30 days. He is the commander-in-chief of the National Guard, and so can deploy it without having to ask anyone to deploy it in Washington, D.C. to address the out-of-control crime problem. And yes, it is out of control. Anyone who tells you crime in Washington, D.C. is okay or going down is oblivious, lying, or doesn't live here. And I don't think the oblivious category comprises anyone substantial. The lying category, as you know, is a large crowd, and everyone else pretending that crime in D.C. is okay doesn't live here. There isn't a person who lives here who thinks crime is okay, and that it's sufficiently low to provide you the safety and security you deserve as a United States citizen, let alone what is necessary for a functioning capital of a major power such as the United States of America. I mean, if you can't come into our nation's capital as a federal employee, as a foreign diplomat, as a worker, someone doing business with Washington, D.C., someone touring Washington, D.C., a U.S. citizen coming to Washington, D.C. to petition their government under the First Amendment because you're in fear for your life and your personal safety, there's something seriously wrong. And under our Constitution, Congress has the authority to run the city, and they've basically delegated it to a corrupt local system that lets criminals run amok. The public safety is secondary to anything else they do, which is essentially promoting socialism and spending tax dollars. It's a nightmare here in the city. I'm a D.C. resident. I know it. In fact, I'm a D.C. As of today, I think I'm the only appointee to the D.C. government by President Trump. In addition to being Judicial Watch president, I'm a member of the Commission on Judicial Disabilities and Tenure, which is a body which oversees the ethics and the reappointment of Superior Court judges and Court of Appeals judges for the District of Columbia. And those are the local, what you would think of as the local judges here. They're appointed initially by the president and confirmed by the Senate. But as commissioner, I've been a commissioner for 5 years now, provided my views on election renomination or judicial renominations and to President Biden and President Trump. But I've seen up close and personal the dysfunction of the courts, some of which aren't the court's fault, and the dysfunction of the D.C. government generally. I issued this tweet the other day which described or summarized my concerns. Let's go to tweet, was it 39? I lost my cheat sheet here.
On screen.
Yeah, why don't you go to the version I have? I'll post it up. Oh, you got it already? Okay. I fully support President Trump's decision to take control of D.C. police and deploy the National Guard to restore the rule of law in Washington, D.C. And then I go into this issue about me being on the commission. I have witnessed up close the dysfunction and failures of the D.C. courts, federal and local prosecutors, and local D.C. government in protecting the public safety. I mean, even our commission can't get its work done because of this dysfunction. I know directly, for instance, that my commission is now unable to review a backlog of judicial complaints. These are ethics complaints due to lack of previously promised support from the mayor's office. So the mayor was promising us help, and we haven't gotten what's been promised. The judicial misconduct complaints may have serious ramifications for the public safety, but the commission doesn't have the staff or the budget to fully review them. So can you imagine, having complaints potentially about judges, and that if the complaints pan out could lead to, disclosure of judicial misconduct that has a public safety component. There could be those types of complaints in our system right now that our commission can't look at because we're unable to because of lack of resources. I mean, that's how out of control things are. And we're just one aspect, an important one, of the judicial system and the criminal justice system here in Washington, D.C. Our nation's capital is in crisis. There should be a top-to-bottom review of D.C. governance. Adding federal control of the police and National Guard resources is certainly necessary, but won't be sufficient to address the systemic, corrupt, and wasteful governance failures under home rule. President Trump took an important first step that I hope will ultimately lead to the rescue of my city. And it's your city too. It's your nation's capital. That's why the capital isn't part of a state. It's why the capital is controlled by Congress, because we all have an interest in the nation and a well-run center of culture, commerce, arts, and certainly government. And the left has zero interest in protecting that. They only see the district as a potential 51st state, which is absurd on its face and unconstitutional in my view, so they can get 2 more left-wing senators. And people like me, and frankly, there are many liberals who work in the city. They work in the commissions I'm talking about, or on the courts. The judges aren't Republican for the most part. And I think, I might disagree personally with some of their rulings in terms of being soft on crime, but I know they've got a lot of work to do, and they're completely overwhelmed. In large measure because the D.C. Council is out of control and leftist, and it's just your typical big city run by leftists. And we see this dysfunction in other cities, which in my view is intolerable for those cities as well. It's doubly intolerable for here in Washington, D.C. I mean, what got the president's personal attention, he's been very focused on this since he's come back, because he was outraged when he saw how horrible D.C. was when he got here to begin with in the first term. This young man, his nickname is Big Balls, a funny nickname. He was a member of the Doge team. I think he still was working in some capacity for the federal government. And he nearly was beaten to death after he tried to rescue a woman who was being hassled or carjacked or something. And there's story after story of federal officials, congressional staff, members of Congress being victimized by crime. And crime, I don't know if it's, quote, going down, as Judge Pirro has noted, going down from what to what? From rampage to mob violence? I mean, who are they kidding? No one buys it. I mean, look at this video the other day. I mean, it's so illustrative of why the city is dysfunctional. This leftist attacking the police the other day. This is my note is number 11, sandwich thrower.
Go fucking way! You bitch!
Motherfucker!
Oh! 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 It's fucking gun! It's fucking gun! It's fucking gun!
So that punk had reportedly a salami sandwich that he threw at the police, and he got arrested. He's facing charges. And you know what? He works at the Justice Department, or at least used to work at the Justice Department. Another reason why I don't trust the Justice Department, because that's what the Justice Department is full of people like that, frankly, from my experience, willing to do activity like that. And Trump had a brilliant insight into the impact this kind of chaos and anarchy has on visitors to the city, and he talked about his dear old dad. Let's go to number 16.
said, you know, my father always used to tell me, I had a wonderful father, very smart, and he used to say, son, when you walk into a restaurant and you see a dirty front door, don't go in, because if the front door is dirty, the kitchen's dirty also. Same thing with the Capitol. If our Capitol's dirty, our whole country is dirty, and they don't respect us. So it's a very good question, actually.
I mean, he's always got the great insight. I know my family was talking about that quote the other day, and the story was my grandmother simply refused to eat in restaurants, just refused to eat in them. And so his father was probably of my grandmother's ilk when it came to the cleanliness of restaurants back in the day. But that's true. It's like the broken windows theory, right? That Rudy Giuliani famously implemented in cleaning up New York successfully. He said, you know, if all the windows are broken, it just undermines confidence in the public safety and invites more crime. Because it shows the rule of law, really, that civilization is kind of not running things. Civil society is broken down. And that's true in Washington, D.C. I mean, my concern about Washington, D.C. is that there are not enough National Guard, not enough federal resources. It's a big city. You need a lot of people to be deployed. It's not just in the high crime areas, it's in the so-called low crime areas where low crime is still too high. There isn't an area of the city that is immune from the criminal class that's been allowed to run rampant. And now the D.C. government has sued Trump to try to restrict his ability to get the police under control and direct their law enforcement. I'm not sure what the courts are going to do there, so there's always a fight. But more power to President Trump. This home rule experiment needs to be reevaluated. Our nation's capital is being destroyed from within for decades, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop. You know, and I've been talking about this Russiagate stuff, and there's so much that's been released. You know, and generally, and it's good it's been released. I'm not complaining about the disclosures. Many of these records have been withheld from Judicial Watch through our FOIA lawsuits. We uncovered pretty much everything that we know about the abuse of Trump under the false Russiagate smears. Comey lying, stealing records, et cetera, et cetera. The FISA abuses, we got the FISA records. We exposed Christopher Steele and the dossier and how the FBI was giving him money. I mean, they were giving money to Steele for the dossier along with Hillary. It was a joint operation. And then we exposed and detailed and highlighted the various meetings Obama was in to pursue and push these Russia smears in a seditious way against Trump. And so we now have more information that shows that all of that should have been prosecuted. There was more than enough evidence. There was evidence already out there that was public, more than enough to prosecute the Obama, Hillary, Biden gang. And now we've got more evidence coming out. And everyone's getting excited about it, but my response is, where are the prosecutions? And am I confident the prosecutions will emerge? I was on Newsmax the other day talking about it, so I'll let that speak for itself. Let's run that.
They declassified some terrible documents talking about Democrats and what they did. Radical left lunatics. It's incredible what we're finding. Absolute proof of guilt. And we'll see what happens. But Clapper and Comey and that whole group of criminals, they're criminals. It was a whole scheme to try and demean Trump so that I couldn't win an election. And that is a criminal group of people. They're sick people, and they're criminals, and they should be taken care of.
President Trump speaking for a lot of Americans right there who are demanding accountability for this years-long Russia hoax scam. This after newly declassified emails, bombshells really, that are coming out. The DNI James Clapper, back in 2017, manufacturing an intel assessment on supposed Russian interference, directing officials to, quote, compromise the normal process, saying that they all needed to be on the same team, despite concerns from then director of the National Security Agency, Mike Rogers. Clapper responded in an email saying about Russian collusion, "That's our story, and we're sticking to it," as if the facts didn't matter. It was all about the narrative. Meantime, newly declassified memos also contain allegations that the then FBI chief James Comey leaked classified material to the New York Times through a friend. He used a special conduit to the Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times in his bid to polish his image and push for a special prosecutor to take down President Trump. It's all very sick. The story adds, Columbia University law professor Daniel Richman admitted to agents in interviews at the FBI that he routinely communicated on behalf of Comey, his longtime friend, with New York Times reporter Michael Schmidt. And let's not forget about Adam Schiff. We now know that a whistleblower, a Democrat, working for them on the Intel Committee, told the FBI in 2017 that the then congressman approved leaking classified material, which is against the law, all in an effort to frame Trump. If true, it would be a felony. So are we going to do something? Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch. He's been at the tip of the spear in exposing a lot of this from day one. He joins us live. Tom, welcome back.
Hey, good to be with you, Ed. How are you?
President Trump says, I want these people taken care of. Your reaction to the newly declassified material, because some people are saying, particularly what Clapper said, is almost a smoking gun.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of a whole military's worth of smoking guns in these documents. The challenge for the Justice Department and the FBI is that there's nothing new here in the sense that the core crimes have long been known. We knew they messed with the intelligence assessment 6-7 years ago. We knew Comey and his friend Richmond. Comey took FBI files about Trump and leaked them through his friend Richmond. These were classified documents he stole, given a free pass. So now we have further details on it. Schiff was known to be a leaker and a liar. Nothing was done. We filed an ethics complaint against them. Republicans didn't do anything. So the question is, what, if anything, can be done now? Maybe there's some perjury charges. Maybe there's this conspiracy theory that works, or, this conspiracy a theory of the case that brings these crimes forward. Of course, President Obama might have some protection as under immunity. I'm a little bit fearful that not much will be done. Maybe some folks will be prosecuted for perjury. I'm as much concerned about what happened last year and why nothing's been done on that as what happened 7-8 years ago. President
in
Trump
terms
was
of lawfare, against President Trump.
Secret Service protection. Obama threatened Biden, according to press reports, in order to get him to pull out of the campaign. The lawfare against Trump. None of that seems to be on at least on the hot plates there at the Justice Department. And I don't just Department FBI can do it.
Right. So pardon me, in the last minute we have then, you're painting a picture of somebody who's been in the beginning that we've heard this before and maybe nothing happens. The counter to that is John Solomon is reporting, as you know, that there might be multiple grand juries right now in places outside D.C. where you got a left-wing jury, and this conspiracy case has a longer statute of limitations, might be going on in Florida, Virginia, Pennsylvania, other states. You have any hope that there'll be criminal charges that stick with any of those grand juries?
I heard a lot of the same arguments about U.S. Attorney Durham, and I'm hopeful something different happens. If I were President Trump, I'd run the investigations directly. He can't. Look, the Justice Department just had to fire an employee for assaulting a federal police officer. That's the group that they're going to have to rely on. He should take it out of those agencies and run it himself.
Got it. All right. Tom Fitton with a reality check tonight. We appreciate it, Tom. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, what's the good news? Let's go through the good news. I know you may think, oh boy, things are just awful. So in Albany, there's reportedly an investigation into Letitia James's abuse of office to attack the civil rights of President Trump under color of law. And that's run by the U.S. Attorney in Albany, according to reports. There are reports, I think largely confirmed, that Letitia James is separately under investigation for mortgage fraud.
So is Adam Schiff under investigation for mortgage fraud. We've talked about that. So that's under Justice Department investigation. There have been referrals to the Justice Department for, I think, was it Brennan and Clapper? I think it's those two, at least Brennan, for potential perjury and conspiracy charges. It's unclear if it's just perjury or, as I talk about, whether this conspiracy theory of the case, not a conspiracy theory, the conspiracy theory of the case, where the theory is that there was a conspiracy that began before Trump was elected that continued more or less to the present day as a result of a series of acts that bring it forward to the present day. It's continuous. Now, that potentially could be a bit of a stretch, but you might be able to get some perjury or maybe even treason charges, depending on how the statute of limitations is interpreted or run. And who knows, maybe there are some specific acts that are pretty extraordinary that go beyond what's in the public that they're able to run with quickly. So I think there are significant challenges. I'm skeptical based on experience. We will push for more transparency, accountability, and the rule of law, and more importantly, accountability for those agencies. You know, the FBI and Justice Department can't be trusted. And that's why I'm kind of inherently skeptical. It doesn't mean they won't do good things, but, you know, I prefer it be on the outside. And frankly, the FBI should be going the way of the dodo bird, given all the corruption it's been involved in and the lack of trustworthiness it's exhibited in terms of being willing to a willing partner in the lawfare against Trump and innocent Americans, going mainly parents and people in churches. These folks can't be trusted. So in the meantime, Judicial Watch's litigation to get access to this information continues. We're fighting, unfortunately, the Justice Department still in court to gain access to key information about the lawfare. Still waiting, for instance, for text messages between the two FBI lovebirds, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. You know, we're still fighting the FBI for 7 years over that. So that's what's behind my skepticism and what's happened in the past. All of these crimes were known to officials in the senior levels of the Justice Department, and they declined to pursue any criminal charges. So that was Barr, Jeff Sessions. So will this new group of Republicans under Trump make the same choices? I think they will prosecute a few more people, but will they go after things the way I think they should go after? I don't know. I think it's at best an open question. But, you know, I don't think it's my job or role to kind of tell you things I really don't believe. I'm really skeptical. I hope something good happens, but I'm skeptical, and we're going to operate as if we have to rely on ourselves to get the truth out, as we have for now 31 years that we've been operating as Judicial Watch. What's next? We are relentless. You may already know, because I say it as much as I can, and I will say it again and again, Judicial Watch lawsuits and legal actions under the National Voter Registration Act has forced 5 million dirty names to be removed from the rolls. 5 million dirty voter names. These are names that shouldn't have been on the rolls. They should have been removed because they were old, moved away, or died. And New York City removed 1 million names or so. LA County removed over 1 million names. Here in D.C., they removed a bunch of names. Pennsylvania, Colorado, Kentucky, you name it. But there's still much more heavy lifting to be done. 5 million is just a portion of the dirty names that are on the rolls nationally. And that's why we filed new lawsuits in Oregon, Illinois, and California to clean up the rolls in those states. Because LA County may have cleaned up the rolls, but other counties in the states are a mess. In California states, in the California, excuse me, it's getting late, in California are a mess. And so what happened is the various state bodies and left-wing interest groups went to court to try to stop our cases from going forward. And over the last 2 weeks, we had 3 different courts authorize our cases to go forward, as I describe in this video here. Number 36.
Hey everyone, big news. Judicial Watch lawsuits were approved to move forward in 3 different federal courts the last few weeks to clean up the voter rolls in 3 different states: Illinois, California, Oregon. Millions of names are on the rolls, our lawsuits allege, that should not be there. Dirty names need to be removed from the rolls under federal law. Now, of course, our heavy lifting has already caused the removal of 5 million names from the rolls nationally, but as we say, millions more still need to be cleaned. So not only will these lawsuits proceed, but we're also investigating other states to make sure their rolls are being kept up to date as federal law requires.
Yeah, in Oregon, the rolls are a real mess. A big victory there that our case is going forward. Now, the cases are going forward not as much as we want them to. They're going forward in a way that allows us to try to get the rolls cleaned up, but they were curtailing our rights elsewhere. So we've still got some fights there, but major, major victories in each of the 3 states. It's just incredible. Oregon, listen to the rolls, listen to the voter roll data in Oregon. 29 of Oregon's 36 counties removed few or no registrations as required by election law. Meaning they didn't take one name off the rolls in some jurisdictions in Oregon. You know how many people leave a jurisdiction over the course of several years? But we're talking potentially among all the 3 states, millions of names that should be removed that haven't been yet. Oregon and 35 of its counties have an overall registration rate exceeding 100%. Okay, think about that number for a second. Let's say you've got 100 voters, and all 100 voters are registered to vote. That's 100% registration rate. If you have 105% registration rate, that means you have more people on the rolls than are living there and eligible to vote. Meaning they're not supposed to be there. It's a pretty good indication that if you got more people on the rolls that are actually living there and eligible to vote, they're not cleaning up the rolls. And to have those astonishing numbers in 35 counties at the time we looked at this information, it's astonishing. Oregon has the highest known inactive registration rate of any state in the nation. And by inactive, it's kind of a term of art the government officials use. It's people who are disappeared, really. They're still on the rolls, but they're not active as voters. And some of them are being asked, are you still there? And they're still not providing any feedback. They're not voting, they're not responsive. And they're just left on the rolls for year after year after year, long after they should be removed, as federal law requires. So we're not like coming in and making some crazy partisan argument. Otherwise, California wouldn't have settled with us initially. New York City settled with us because we said you haven't been removing the names. And they basically said, okay, we will. Please stop suing us. And we did, because we got what we wanted out of them. So it's not like it's a liberal versus conservative perspective. It is, are you doing these basic competencies when it comes to maintaining accurate voting lists? It doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but you got to take steps to remove people after a period of time once they stop voting or move away. And there are ways to ascertain that quite simply. You ask, hey, you didn't vote. Are you still there? And if they don't respond or otherwise vote for a period of 2 federal elections, remove them. That's all they got to do. We now have 3 federal lawsuits against 3 states to clean up potentially millions of rolls. Illinois, another state that's a mess. Let's see what the worst is going on in Illinois. It's Sometimes I forget how bad things are. 23 counties with a combined total of 980,000 registered voters removed just 100 voters among all of them. So you had 39 counties who collectively removed 100 voters. And they've got almost 1 million on the rolls. It's got to be at least 200,000 they should have removed, by my guesstimate. We'll find out through the litigation. California admitted 21 counties removed 5 or fewer registrations in a 2-year period pursuant to the federal law, which is the National Voter Registration Act. 16 counties removed 0 such registrations during that period. And this is like shooting fish in the barrel in terms of, is there any question they're not following the law? So as I noted in the document, in the statement I made at the beginning of this segment, we're also investigating the latest series of data made available under federal law and from the states about their voting roll cleanup efforts. And if there are other states or current states that we're already suing, they're even more of a mess than we know, we will pursue litigation where we can. Again, Judicial Watch has already cleaned up 5 million names from the rolls. There are millions more that still need to be removed in states like Illinois, Oregon, and California. We sued to get the rolls cleaned up. Those suits were allowed and authorized to move forward just in the last 10 to 14 days, full speed ahead to clean up the voter rolls in Judicial Watch. Thank you, Americans who support our work. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. This is just tremendous. And this is on top of the fact we're in the Supreme Court already related to the issue of whether or not you can be counting ballots that arrive after Election Day. Like I said, if there's anyone doing more for election integrity in the United States, I want to meet them. In the meantime, we are the nation's leader. This is something that doesn't happen every day. The government settled, this is another case, settled with Judicial Watch for $10,000 our lawsuit to gain access to the Biden-Her audio tapes under FOIA. We sued the Biden administration. You may recall, Attorney General Garland went into contempt of Congress to hide the audio of Biden's interview with the special counsel. And it was only after we pushed the Trump Justice Department was the document or the audio released. And it led to renewed calls and further investigation of who was running the Biden White House and whether there was essentially government misconduct in the sense that people pretending to be president when the president was completely out of it. You know, the old joke about President Autopen. And so our litigation was significant in that regard. Not only was it an important issue, they were trying to hide the record of Biden's interview, which had already been released. The transcript had been already released. It had been edited, we found out, which highlighted that it was tampered with. We found more evidence that they were trying to tamper with the records to suggest Biden wasn't as out of it as his questioning and answers showed. And the audio was like proof positive. It sounded awful for a lot of people and further led to, as I highlight, the multiple new official investigations of exactly who was running the Biden White House. Now, the modest settlement of $10,000, and under FOIA, if you force the release of documents, you can get attorney's fees and costs. Obviously, $10,000 wasn't our total attorney's fees and costs, but it was a settlement. It's a fraction of the value to the public interest, though, as a result of the success of Judicial Watch's lawsuit. So, you know, $10,000 isn't, it's always nice to have money like that you otherwise would not have had. And it's not going to make or break our work. Although it will allow us to sue a few more government agencies for records, that's for sure. But the point isn't the settlement. The point is it was an acknowledgement by the government that Judicial Watch is right. Right? That we're not going to fight with you about how much money you're due. We'll just give you some money. And I read it as recognition that we were right to sue, and our work led to the release of the records. Records which are changing the course of history, and again, a non-significant way here in the United States of America. So great work by my team at Judicial Watch. This case was pursued by our senior attorney, Michael Takesha. You don't want, again, another attorney you don't want to be on the wrong side of as we are trying to get records from the government. So it was tenacious, persistent work by our legal team that resulted in the cover-up of this tape being ended. Thankfully, but Trump administration deserves credit for ending the cover-up as well, but we gave them the vehicle to do so through our FOIA lawsuit. So we're pretty darn busy here at Judicial Watch. I encourage you, if you haven't already, support our work. You can go to judicialwatch.org, judicialwatch.org, make a contribution. If you've already made a contribution, I thank you, and I would encourage you to support our work again, because the heavy lifting never stops for the rule of law, the U.S. Constitution, against government corruption, and for transparency. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.